If you work from home, you're not the only one. After the COVID pandemic, a lot of companies decided that it was actually beneficial for them to hire and to keep their employees working from home. A lot of people also, after the pandemic, decided to start working as a freelancer or as an independent contractor. But do you know that your home office could actually save you money in your taxes? This is what we're going to talk about today. But first, let's talk about who qualifies. If you are a self-employed, if you own your own business, if you're a freelancer, and a portion of your house is exclusively utilized for that business or for that activity, then you're in luck. You qualify. On the other hand, if you are working for a company via a W-2 form, then hold your horses, because it's a little more tricky for those type of people. So I'm gonna get to them later in the video. Let's talk about what the people who actually qualify, which are all the self-employed, freelancers, people who own their own business. This is more of a straightforward approach, so I'm gonna talk about them first. So now let's talk about the two methods that you can use to claim your home office expenses and how to deduct them through your federal tax return. The first method is called the Simplified method. And that in this Simplified method, the IRS grants you $5 per square feet of your home office space, up to a limit of $300. So for example, if your home office is 100 square feet, you multiply that by $500, that's how much you can expense out through your deduction in your federal tax return. This one is a very straightforward approach, because you don't need to have any receipts, you don't need to have any picture, you pretty much don't need to have any supporting documentation, but at the same time it's very limited and it's very restricted. So if your home office is bigger, or if you have incurred in additional expenses that are in excess of the $5 times 300 square feet value, then you will need to go to the next method. And this is called the actual expense method. What this method allows you to do is for you to convert your home office into a percentage of your house. For example, if your house is 1,000 square feet and your home office, when you measure, is 100 square feet, that means that your home office space is 10% of your total house space. And then when you have that percentage, you have to then assign a ratio or multiply by your direct and indirect costs. And don't worry if you don't understand it exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm gonna have an example later on, which I'm gonna break down simple step-by-step of how you need to make all this calculation and how it works. But before we go to an example, it's very important for you to know what you can expense or what can you use to calculate your expense deduction and what you cannot do. There's two main things, or two main buckets, is the direct expenses and indirect expenses. Your direct expenses are anything that you have expensed only and for the benefit of the office, either for improvement or for repairs. For example, you install a new heating system only for your office and does not go through the rest of your house. That will be considered a direct expense. The same thing, you install a fan that is only located and is only benefiting the office, then that will be an expense method, a direct method. The indirect method is, for example, your rent, your utility, anything that you spend in order to keep the house, and that's when it's important to have that 10% or what is the ratio of your home office compared to the total size of your house. So for example, if your rent is $1,000 a month and your home office represents 10% of the total space of your house, then you take $1,000 multiplied by 10%, that will be $100. That's how much you can allocate on a monthly basis through your expense for your indirect cost for your tax deduction. And then you multiply that by 12, that will be your yearly expense for rent, right? So just don't hang out too much on the numbers. I put some numbers together and I'm gonna go through an example so it will be easier for you to understand. So now we're gonna go to a real example of how the indirect expense method is calculated. And I have put some notes so I can just go through it and we can go together and understand 100% how this works. So let's say that you have a home size of 1,200 square feet. The home office is 120 square feet, so it will be 10% of the total home. Let's say you have a rent of $1,500 a month, which a year will be $18,000, and you have utilities between electrical, water, gas, internet, etc. of $300 a month. That equates to $3,600 a year. You have a home insurance of $1,200, and also you did some repairs, and these repairs are for your entire home, right? So these were not repaired only to improve the value or the area of your office. It was for, let's say, a leak in your roof or something like that, right? So the first step that you have to do, like I mentioned before, is to calculate what is the percentage of your home office. So in this case will be 10%, right? So you have 1,200 square feet divided by 120 square feet, which is the size of your home office. That will be 10%. So then when you have that 10%, then you're gonna multiply your rent. So it will be $18,000 times 10% is $1,800. Then you have your utility, which is $3,600 a year times the 10%, $360. Insurance, $1,200 times 10%, that's the $120. And then you have the repairs, which is $600 times 10%, that's $60. You add them all together, and that will give you the first portion of your indirect cost, total annual expenses. Then you take your direct cost, which was any type of repair that you did exclusively to your home office. Let's say you paint the walls, you put a fan, and let's just for this example, let's say that you spend $500. So all those $500 could be expensed out. You don't have to allocate that to the 10% that we previously discussed, because all those expenses were directly affecting the home office. And then the total of all that, when you put all that together, is $2,840. So the good thing about the IRS is, or I guess the only thing that is good about the IRS about paying taxes and deduction, is that it allows you to take a look at both methods. Do the simplified method, see how much your return will be, and then do the more advanced method, right? And the actual expense method, and then compare, right? Which of the two give you the highest tax deductible amount, and then you can use that one. But it's very, very important that if you're going to use this method, you need to have receipts, you need to have picture, you need to have a lot of supporting documentation in case that you get audited. You can justify to any auditor every single line item within your expense and how it was calculated. Okay, now for all the W-2 employees out there, you're kind of out of luck. After the tax cut and act job, pretty much your federal tax deductions went out the window. You don't have anything. You cannot claim any expense. Even if you're working 100% of your time at home and you're incurring on all these expenses and your company are not paying none of your bills, you cannot deduct anything. However, there's two states that you can still claim state tax. One of them is California and the other one is New York. However, there's also some regulations and some guidance that you need to follow. For example, in California, it only allows you to deduct if your business or the business that you're working for does not have a physical location where you can go to work. For example, if I'm hiring you and I'm here in Texas and I do not have any location or any office building in California, and you're working from California, then you will be able to deduct your expenses in California because of that scenario. But if I'm hiring you and I also have an office in California nearby where you work within driving distance, then you are not able to deduct your expenses. And there is a similar regulation in New York around those lines. And I don't want to go too in depth into the state tax because this a little more complicated, and I don't think will be beneficial for a YouTube video to give you a very specific how-to on your estate tax. I recommend you, if you're in that situation, to consult an accountant, a CPA accountant preferable, for you to really go into those details to define if you really qualify or not, and what you need to do and what you need to have in order to qualify. Please make sure to follow these 3 very important tips so you avoid issues with the IRS and with an auditor in the future. And the first one is you need to keep receipts, picture, basically supporting documentation of everything that you have deducted for your home office and how it was deducted, how it was calculated, and so an auditor can just go and trace everything that you did and compare it and make sure that you're following the IRS guidelines. That is very, very important. If you do not have that supporting documentation, I recommend you not to do it. Go to the Simplified method or talk to a CPA accountant to see what other documentations can you have in order to support your calculation. That's very important. And also number 2, you need to be sure that you're not overstating the size of your home office. That's super critical. Auditors know that some people overstate the size of their home, and that is a immediately red flag, and you will be audited, you will be caught, and you will have to pay penalties. So do not cheat the IRS, do not cheat the government. You know, they're giving you that benefit. Just use it if it applies to you. Use it responsibly. Always follow the guidance of a CPA accountant to make sure that you're following the law and that you're not breaking. So that's very important. And lastly, but it's also very important, is there's a lot of softwares and tools. So you don't need to hire a full-blown accountant to do this type of work. It's actually quite simple. You can actually just print out the form and do it. However, I understand that not everybody knows how to fill up a form, especially those IRS forms are not very intuitive. But there is a lot of softwares out there like TurboTax and so many others that it guides you step by step. And if you have any questions, you can send them a message, or you can contact them via Teams or have a phone call, and they will guide you, they will give you more information about how to do it using their tool. So just to make sure that you're doing it correctly. And of course, they're not going to validate the information that you put it in. They're just going to tell you how to do it to make sure that you're not violating any IRS guidance. But it's your responsibility as the filer to have your numbers and to have your receipt and to have your supporting documentation. Let me conclude this video by telling you that you should do research, you should talk to an expert, but if you qualify for a home office federal tax deduction, you should 100% do it. Maximizing your home office tax deduction will put real money back in your pocket. And especially in this DNA, I think every cent is worth. So if you like this type of video, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. I really appreciate for all my subscribers. There are not that many. I'm starting, and there's still a lot of things to do with all this video recording and to make this video more appealing. But I'm learning, and hopefully the information that I'm giving you is valuable and it will help you in the future. And remember, do not pay attention to all the fuss out there. Just focus on the fundamentals, and I guarantee you that you will be financially successful in the future. Thank you, and see you next Sunday.